Zadon Electro Ninja here, and welcome back to Electro Ninja's Lab. Today's video is a bit special. Yeah, I don't really know how else to describe it. Oh, Frel. This episode of Show It Some Love is different, plain and simple. First off, this is not a show that I would necessarily suggest to my normal audience. And that's part of the reason why I didn't do anything with the green screen today, just because it's not the easiest show to talk about. This show is for mature audiences, and not because of the reasons that you may be thinking. Like, most shows, you're expecting it to be like there's a lot of sex, there's a lot of language, sometimes with a lot of violence, but most of the time you can kind of expect violence will make it PG or not necessarily mature audiences. But this show is only rated mature because of the violence. There is no foul language, and when they do have sex scenes, it is not actually. It is PG-13 stuff. Like, seriously, this is stuff that you maybe would see on things on the CW. Okay, maybe a little bit more, but it's still, like, about that level. So, yeah. it's it's weird. Um the show that I'm of course talking about is Cursed, the new Netflix original show about the Lady of the Lake. Yes, the Lady of the Lake from King Arthur's mythos, which honestly is insane to think about considering the fact that, well, nobody really talks about that. Cursed is a good show. Do not get me wrong, but I do have to at least bring forth the things that would probably make people not want to go watch it, which is mostly for my audience's sake, because I don't want my audience to go watch it unless they are actually they kind of like the actual stuff, and they don't mind the stuff that is kind of hard to actually deal with. The first thing to note is that this show features a lot of violence. Like I said, there is gore. There is just plain and simple a lot of gore. If you let's put it on Castlevania levels, but since it's not animated, it looks real. And it's really hard to look at. It's worse than Castlevania in that sense, which Castlevania is bad. Do not get me wrong, but it's if something gets to that level, then you know that you've got a problem. It it's not quite to the same level of organs falling from the sky, but there is blood rain. There is people burning on stakes, and they actually show the skeletons and stuff. There, people are cut open, and wolves are cut open. Animals are decaying. It's not a good show to watch when you're eating or when you're about to go to sleep. Just plain and simple. There are two scenes that will seriously trigger arachnophobia. One where a spider goes into Morgana's mouth, and another where it walks across her eye. No joke. And they're in the same episode, so you're not like, it's not as bad as you might think. But if they are going to continue this show, it's likely that that spider will have a lot more stuff to happen with it, which, needless to say, is not the easiest thing for people to deal with. So, just be aware of that. As for other things that will probably drive people away from this show, one, this show features a lot of discussion about racism, but it's not the same type of racism that we think of usually. These are actual creatures that are noticeably different, called the Fae. Yeah, we're talking about the Fae, fairies, stuff like that. People that there are people with tusks. There are people with wings. There are all sorts of people. There's people with snake skin, and it's much more noticeable than when you than almost anything. It's almost the same level of predator versus prey of Zootopia, except that both sides actually want to live, or a lot of people actually do want to live in peace, but it's for a more mature audience, so it actually deals with the bad stuff, as in a good amount of people want these fae to be destroyed, and it's not fun. It is not good at all. There's also some sexism, to say the least. Like, very few people actually believe that a woman can do anything. Um, and if you look at the cast, the majority of the cast is male, which for the times is not surprising. And they kind of had to do that because of the whole situation at that time. I mean, seriously, there are, aside from a few specific episodes, the main cast has maybe two females. Those being Morgana and the main character, and I always forget what her name is because she's not really in Mythos. um, and she's not going to be showing up in the next few seasons. I hate to say that that's spoilers, but it's not really, because this is the story of the Lady of the Lake. This first season gets her into the lake. It, like, she is still going to show up probably to eventually take the sword and then give it to Arthur eventually, but for right now, we don't know what's going to happen. A few other things. There is a bit of homophobia. They actually handled it better than most shows do, considering the fact that in the times, yeah, back then, if you were gay, you would probably be burned at the stake. And they show that that is actually the situation for the two gay characters. They are scared. They do not want to actually deal with this. They can't ever show themselves, and they are terrified if they actually get seen. And that's it. That's basically it. It is gonna... that may trigger some people, but it's accurate to the times. That's the main reason that's there. A lot of these things that are in there are because of the times and how things were back then. The only thing that isn't really is the actual racism, because it wasn't, unless it's like mythology and stuff, then that wasn't necessarily a thing back then. But let's actually talk about the stuff that is good about the show. So the main character, I always forget what her name is, but she loses her family pretty early on and has to take the sword to Merlin, Excalibur. Along the way, she meets Arthur, and the two of them team up. Lots of drama, lots of romance, and lots of other bullcrap. Merlin is in there. Morgana is Arthur's sister. Like, holy crap, there are way too many situations where Morgana is Merlin's sister. It's a bit weird, to say the least. I always forget that's a lot of shows, when shows actually make Morgana Merlin's sister, or not Merlin's sister, Arthur's sister. It honestly does confuse me a bit, but meh, whatever. They actually give a good reason for why she is Morgan Le Fay, and it is because of the fact that she helps out the Fae and helps them out a ton. There's a lot that goes on with her and her helping the Fae. Obviously, it tells the story of Arthur and how he grew to become a good king. Originally, he was a jerk. He wasn't bad or anything, but he stole Excalibur from the main character, so there's that. But it shows his growth as a character. A few other things to actually keep in mind is that they introduce a lot, and I mean a lot, of the Roundtable members. I don't want to spoil who some of the characters are, but uh, but for sure Percival and Lancelot are in this, and they are Fae. So a good amount of the different members of the future Roundtable are Fae, and it's honestly interesting to see how that's going to turn out. A few of them are humans, um, and a few of them, they're not actually going to be joining the Roundtable because either they die by the end of the show, or they are in such a state that it really doesn't make sense for them to join the Roundtable, or they just straight up hate Arthur and the Fae. So yeah, that's mostly the humans. But other than that, like most of these, Arthur is actually going to be a decent character, and it is looking like a lot of the people who are actual members of the Round Table will probably become Arthur's knights after this whole situation. And there's a lot of really, really good characters, honestly. Now, obviously, certain characters have not yet been introduced, like Guinevere. Guinevere has not been introduced. And while I said that a lot of the Roundtable members are introduced, most of them aren't necessarily people that you would automatically think of. The reason that I actually know that certain characters are actually members of the Round Table is because after I found out that a character is Lancelot, I was like, oh, I'm pretty sure that like a lot of these characters are probably Round Table members, and sure enough, they are. So definitely look forward to that as you watch the show. Um, Keep a lookout. Actually, I would recommend getting a list of the uh, members of the Round Table and just pay attention to the names and just be like, oh, that's that person and that's that person and that, and keep a list of which ones live, which ones die, which ones are likely not going to be actually joining the Round Table. Oh, cough, cough, bores. I know that may sound like spoilers, but I'm serious. He's vile, and I hate him. But yeah, you'll see when you actually see him. It may sound like bores, but it may sound like spoilers, but Bors is evil, and no. Um, and Lancelot, even though I say that he's in there, it's not until the actual end that you actually find out who he is. So look forward to that. um, really, this show is meant for people who like mythology, especially people who like the mythology of Arthur. And it actually brings up a decent point that I think we'll most likely be getting a video in the future of what if Arthur and the Knights of the Round Table actually became miraculous holders. So we'll be looking into that at some point. Of course, obviously there are a few other things to keep in mind about this show. One, like I said, this is the story of the Lady of the Lake. This is not the story of Excalibur is in the stone. No. In this universe, the as far as we are aware, the stone doesn't exist. Um I mean, it might eventually exist. Like maybe we'll find out eventually that there is actually a stone, and only the true king can actually pull it out if it ever gets plunged in. Um, but likely what's going to happen is that Arthur is going to probably get the sword eventually from the Lady in the Lake. That's probably going to be at the end of season 2, if there is going to be a season 2. Um, because currently Merlin has the sword, not the main character. Just plain and simple. I don't know if that really needs a spoiler warning, but Merlin does get the sword. So, yeah. Um, so likely what's going to happen is that when he might get the sword from there, and in order to save the world from something vile, or to save the Fae from actually being hurt more, Arthur is asked to put the sword into the stone. And then he eventually removes it. It all remains to be seen how exactly they're going to handle it. Also, things remain to be seen what is exactly going to happen to Morgana. Is she going to become evil? Honestly, at this moment, even though she's kind of leaning towards that route, it's unclear. So, we'll see. I know that this may have sounded like there were a lot of spoilers in this video, but they kind of had to be talked about in order to explain what makes this show so good. So, even though I've said a lot about this show, I do still recommend that you watch it. It is a, I guess, disaster show. Kind of like how the other amazing Netflix original, why am I forgetting its name? Uh, Dark Crystal. Even it's very similar to Dark Crystal in the fact that this is a disaster show. You know that by the end of this show, something bad is going to happen. And even though you do know this stuff, it's still a good show, and it does deserve to be watched. There are a good amount of Chekhov's gun. They do actually work through a lot of the different things and handle it really well, considering. So, I do suggest that you watch it, because I do feel like a lot of people are going to love this show. And I've left a good amount of the mystery still open for you guys. You guys still don't know who Lancelot is. You guys don't know who Percival is. Just watch the show and enjoy it. If you're over 18, or, well, I guess more accurately, over 17, because this is a hard show to watch. So if you're actually willing to watch it, then do check it out, because I think that you guys will enjoy it. But anyways, guys, I've been Electro Ninja, and I will see you guys in the next video. But on!